So before we start learning and applying the laws of exponents, let's identify bases and exponents. So let's start at the beginning. This is a number, and all numbers have a base and an exponent. The number 3, the base is 3, and the exponent is 1. This is a variable. All variables have a base and an exponent. So when I see x, that equals x to the 1. X is the base, and 1 is the exponent. This is a negative sign. All negative signs have a base and an exponent. I see a negative sign. It has a base of 1 and an exponent of 1. A negative sign really is a negative 1 to the 1. So when working with and applying the laws of exponents, we must always keep in mind that everything has its own base and exponent. Whether you're a number, a variable, or a negative sign, everything has its own base and exponent. Everything. So let's identify some bases and exponents. So to begin with, we have a negative. So the negative we know is a negative 1 to the 1, so it has a base and an exponent, times 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 a base and an exponent. So like I said, everything has its own base and exponent. These negatives were negative 1 to the 1. These numbers were the numbers to the first power. This x was to the first power. Let's identify some more. So we have a negative sign. So it's a negative base to an exponent times base to an exponent times a base and 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 an exponent. Again, the negative sign had its own base and exponent. The numbers had its own base and exponent. The A's and the B's. Okay, now we're working inside parentheses. Same principle. We have a base and an exponent times a base and an exponent times a base and an exponent times a, all raised to the third power. And we're in the parentheses. We have a negative, so it's a base to a power, exponent times a base to an exponent times a base to an exponent times a base to an exponent, all raised to the fourth power. In our last example, we have a negative. It has a base and an exponent times a base and an exponent times a base and an exponent, all raised to the second power.